Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Rocket Chiro podcast, the business and marketing podcast for chiropractors. We're going to talk today about how new patients contact you as a chiropractor, the pros and cons of those things, why things matter, why they don't. We're going to climb inside the patient's head a little bit. And we're also going to talk about some things to be aware of as you're communicating with patients, because we don't want to get ourselves in trouble as chiropractors. So that's going to be the plan for the day. I was talking to my chiropractor actually just this morning. He had asked me to meet with him and talk to him about some of his local SEO and some of his website stuff. So we were talking about that, and we started talking about new patients and how they reach out to him. And that's actually what became the spurring on idea of this podcast, because it's something that I do talk to my website clients about, but it's not something I necessarily talk about on the podcast, or at least I can't remember talking about it on the podcast. So that's what we're going to do. Before I get into that, I do want to say, if you want help with your website, you want a better chiropractic website, something that's simple, that's new patient focused, that does a great job at converting, and it shows up well in the Google rankings, then check out Rocket Chiro. I'd love to create a website for you, especially if you're a regular listener to the podcast and you're already on board with what Rocket Chiro is about, and you just want a better website. You're tired of doing it yourself, or you're tired of your website company because they created a crappy, cluttered website for you that looks like it was designed 30 years ago. Then reach out to me. I'll be glad to. Maybe 30 years ago were there not websites for chiropractors 30 years ago? Probably weren't, right? How old am I? Anyway, if you want help, I can help you. If you want help with your Google ads, if you want help with local SEO, I can also do that. Reach out to me through Rocket Chiro. If you're just getting started or feeling stuck as a chiropractor and you want to get some information that goes beyond the podcast and you want access to me, look into my Next Step program. It's a great way to get help and to get started in the right direction, get a little momentum that's taking your practice from stuck to started and going in the right direction. All right. So when it comes to new patients, and specifically what I'm talking about here is I'm talking about new patients that don't already know you in some capacity. And the reason it is different is because if someone has been referred to you, there's sort of a transfer of trust that happens. If someone's done their research online and they've just sort of convinced themselves through your reviews and your website and whatever that you're the person, like this is the person that I have found, this is the person that I want to contact, and they've really convinced themselves, there's been a really significant transfer of trust. If they follow you on social, if you're really well known in the area, if you're a big deal because you're some sports chiropractor guy that practices for the team or has some famous patient, there are some authority and sort of reputation things and referral things that could very well just bypass all the stuff that we're talking about today, because those people are already really committed to you. There's like a level of stickiness that they already have. So whether they contact you by phone or email or texting or social or online, like none of that really matters. They're going to wait around. If they don't hear from you in a couple of days, they're still going to be waiting there to get your phone call back, and they're going to be excited when you call. So I'm not saying you should wait a bunch of days to contact someone back if you're a big deal, but if someone is already they know you, they're excited about you specifically, then none of this stuff really matters. Where it really matters is when people don't really know you. They just found your website for the first time. They just found you on Google. They just drove by. They just whatever. Like they don't really know you. So they're looking at your website. They're looking at other chiropractors' websites. They're looking at your online scheduler. They may get a hold of you. They may get a hold of somebody else. Those people, if how they get a hold of you matters. How long it takes you to get back to them matters. And ideally what you're trying to do, and this is sort of skipping ahead a little bit to the end, but ideally what you're trying to do with that demographic of people is you're trying to connect with them as quickly as possible, because time does matter. Like if somebody gets a hold of you and they don't hear from you for a couple of days, it's likely they've gone to another chiropractor's website and they've just went ahead and scheduled something, or they've done something that's easier or more convenient or quicker, and they have just forgot about you altogether because they weren't really committed to you in the first place. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that's why this actually will matter. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, people are contacting me this particular way and they're ghosting me, I can't get a hold of them, it's just this big giant headache. I could probably tell you which way they're contacting you if I had to guess. So this is what we're going to talk about: phones, emails, texting, online scheduling, and social media. It's important to note that also people generally do what's easier, not necessarily what's best. So if any of these things are a pain in the butt, if they're kind of inconvenient, if they're slow, like all of those things are negative. So just keep that in mind. Pros and cons. So the phone, the biggest pro for the phone is that it's personal. You get to hear someone's voice. You get to make a connection with them. I'm assuming that you or whoever is answering the phone is doing a good job there. If someone has a bad, like a tone that's not great for the phone, or they hate talking on the phone like I do, probably not the ideal person to have like on the forefront of your phone answering process. And if you hate answering the phone and you're the only one, then maybe don't answer the phone. Like maybe push everybody to some other way of contacting you. So, but the best thing about phone is there's no quicker way to have a personal connection with someone than to hear their voice and to talk to them in that way. The big con of the phone is that there's a whole percentage of people, and especially a much higher percentage of people with the younger demographic, they just don't want to talk on the phone. They hate talking on the phone. They hate doing phone calls. And so that's the biggest issue with the phone is there's just a whole bunch of people that don't want to do it. And for a lot of people, it's a deal breaker. They would much rather text, or they'd much rather message. They would much rather use an online scheduler and just bypass the phone conversation altogether. I fall squarely into that category. I am not interested at all in picking up the phone and calling a company if I don't have to. Emails. So emails is another thing. Phone and email has been around for a really long time. These are kind of established things. The biggest pro of email is it is easy. I mean, it's way easier than anything. I mean, it's just as easy as texting or anything else. It's probably easier than texting because it's even more separated. Like somebody who's a kind of an introvert and doesn't like human contact all that much, emails are super easy because you don't expect to get an instant message back. So for those of you who don't know, us who are introverts, phone calls, very anxiety inducing. Messaging is less anxiety inducing, but it's more anxiety inducing than emails because you know that you're probably going to get a response right away. And that delay of email is actually the easiest thing for an introvert, unless we're just going to fax the office, which I'm not even talking about on here. So email is easy. The downside of email, there's huge downsides of emails. And the biggest downside is that people don't read their emails. There's a time delay with the emails. And when you do call someone who emailed, the reason they emailed you in the first place is because they didn't want to call you. So when you call them, a lot of them don't answer the phone. So if you're a chiropractor who's frustrated with people getting a hold of you and then they're ghosting you or whatever, I would venture to guess that a lot of these people are getting a hold of you through email. And it's partly because it's not an ideal situation for people that are getting a hold of you and they're wanting a response right away. So that time delay is a problem. The other part of it is just the human being you're not considering the human being and why they're emailing you in the first place, which is they don't want to talk to you on the phone. And so I don't think it's a great option, but it is something that some chiropractors will use. I tend to discourage people from using it because I don't think it's great. Next, we have texting. I would say texting to me is my favorite. Texting you have the easiness for the most part of like email. It's quick because you generally get a quicker response. So you kill some of that time delay. People absolutely see them. You know, like email open rates might be 20%, whereas a texting open rate is going to be in the 90%, generally speaking. So people are going to see the message that you send them. Now, you can't make them respond, but they are going to see it. So you're kind of eliminating a major issue that is there with email. Is not going to be that way with texting. But the biggest con with texting is that there are some regulations and there's some HIPAA issues with texting. And there's also the issue with, and this sort of goes hand in hand, where it requires some extra software. Really, to do it right, it requires some extra software. I know a lot of chiropractors that have micro practices or have solo practices or just using their phone. And it isn't ideal. And I get it. I totally understand. I would probably, if I was personally practicing, I would probably not think too much about doing that. But the more you look into it, the more you go, yeah, you're not exactly in a safe area by doing that. Even something as simple as, hey, John, your appointment is at 3:00. that could technically be a HIPAA violation because you're connecting John to a medical service, and there's like that's technically a potential issue. And I think your starting point for making yourself safe, if you're going to use unsecure texting, like your standard cell phone or whatever, the starting point is to have some sort of acknowledgement on the patient's part, some sort of either checkbox or a response or some sort of acknowledgement that says they understand that what they're doing and that they shouldn't share privacy stuff, and you should document that in their file. That gives you a little bit more leeway, and it protects you a little bit more. And I think that's probably a wise thing to do if you're still using your cell phone. The other option, which would be probably the better option, but it is going to end up costing you more money, most likely, and that is to use some sort of secure texting option. Now, I personally have not used these, so I don't know how convenient or inconvenient they are in terms of like user friendliness and patience and things of that nature. So it's just something to be aware of. And I know that there's a little bit of an incomplete thought that is here because of some of the changing regulations and just the fact that I'm talking about this now. And it's like, and I don't have some sort of like A to Z complete plan and recommendation for you. I think my just starting point for this conversation in this podcast is just understand that there is some privacy issues there, and you just want to protect yourself as much as possible. And I think one of the starting points for that could potentially be a consent of some sort on the patient's part. Next is online scheduling. Online scheduling is very convenient. There's a level of commitment that goes with online scheduling, which is nice. People are much less likely to ghost you after they've scheduled an appointment online versus if they've emailed you. I mean, the level of commitment is drastically different. They've sort of planted their flag in the ground. They've said, this is the chiropractor I'm going to, and this is when I'm going. So in that sense, the convenience of it and the commitment level of it is good. That doesn't mean people never schedule and don't come in. Like that is a thing. But that's going to be much less than other like email or something like that. The negative side of online scheduling is that one, it does sometimes require extra software, or it requires an extra money on your part because there's sometimes this isn't built into whatever thing that you're using for patient notes and things of that nature. So sometimes there's some extra money involved with it. The other part of it is the doctor does lose some level of control with their schedule. I know for real busy offices, this can be an issue. I know for certain personalities, it can be an issue. This isn't something I never did online scheduling because it wasn't even a thing when I got out of practice, which I know makes me sound like I'm a million years old and I haven't practiced in 1,000 years, but it just wasn't really a thing. And so I never had any experience with it, but I don't think I would have used it anyway. I'm not a huge fan of sort of having open-ended appointment times for patients, especially for new patients. And so I personally don't think I would have been a fan of it, but lots of chiropractors use it. I mean, a lot of chiropractors use it. So I don't think that it's a bad thing at all. And I think generally when people do use it, they tend to like it. But that is going to be the downside of it if we're just going to talk about online scheduling. I do want to talk about social media. So I actually had planned this podcast and I didn't even mention social media, but I do want to mention it because chiropractors who are popular on social media or who have started to grow a following, and that's kind of one of the main avenues that you're going to go to grow your practice. They do get communication, direct messaging communication to patients through social media. It's not going to be uncommon at all for that to happen. And the people that I've talked to that are big on social media, they've told me that a lot of times it's just easier to get that person scheduled through the direct messaging. You're not sending them to the online scheduler. You're not having them call. Like it's just more convenient, and it actually is better from a closing standpoint to get them to just go ahead and schedule in the DMs. The problem with that is that's even less secure than your texting, than your phone is. There's no way that it isn't secure. It isn't secure. It's not HIPAA compliant. I don't know that there's a situation where it ever would be. And so all of those conversations you're having on social media, which I have advocated for, and I do, this is a struggle for me. It's like this is a struggle for me because I go, man, I totally understand why you would text a patient, and I understand why you would text a potential patient, and I know why you would get pulled into answering questions and things of that nature. So this is definitely a struggle for me personally, where I'm like, man, I'm not sure how I would handle this, how comfortable I would be with the gray area, or just ignoring it and doing it anyway. I don't know. I think that there's some issues there that need to be sorted out. And maybe as time goes on, there's going to be a way of doing that for health practitioners, that they can message through their social media and have it be HIPAA compliant. I think that's probably interesting, an interesting development that could happen. But it is something that you want to be aware of. I think the same thing is true for social media as it is for texting, where I would say the bare minimum is you would want to have some sort of agreement or understanding, consent, that the person acknowledges that what they're doing, what you're doing, that it's private, or that it's not private, and they shouldn't be sharing private information. So I think that's probably your starting point for that. I think the other headache with social media is it's kind of a headache to keep track of it. Social media direct messaging is not really designed for messaging and keeping track of messages in that way, like you would with like email or texting or something like that. It's not really designed for that. It's not ideal for that. So there's some issues with sort of keeping track of things, but I think the privacy issue is probably a bigger issue than the hassle of it. And I would say the other thing about social media that's a hassle is those who are not really busy and really active on social media. When someone gets a hold of you through social media, it sort of just sucks, because a lot of times the chiropractors who aren't real active on social media aren't getting their messages right away. And then you just kind of lose someone through that process. So there can be a little bit of a disconnect between the person if the person's very active on social and it's normal for them to reach out to people through direct message, and then the chiropractor is not very active or isn't getting their messages. And probably the tip there is just make sure that you're getting your messages forwarded to you, or you're getting some sort of notification about messages on your phone if somebody reaches out to you on social. That way you're not missing those opportunities if they're there. So what are my recommendations? Phone should always be an option, and just make sure you have a very clear and short message when going to voicemail. And we used to change our voicemail message all the time based on if there was something that people needed to know. Like if we were going to be gone, we would let people know. If there was, if we were going to get return calls, like, what our normal hours were or whatever, but you do want to keep it short. Really, really long messages before you go to voicemail are super annoying. So just keep it short, tidy, clear, and, but have something that's there. Email is not a great option. I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not a fan. I'm just not for new patients, scheduling. You can do it if you want to. There's plenty of clients that I have that still have email forms and they do it. It's just not great. And I'll tell you the same thing I told my chiropractor this morning is just, you're losing people because of that. You're losing people through the process of email. Texting is great. Just make sure that you're aware of the privacy stuff and you're handling it as smart as possible. Some possibilities would be consider an automated response about privacy. So have a consent kind of geared up for an auto response, and have them acknowledge, maybe, whether that's a checkbox or text back the word yes or whatever. There would be some sort of response from the person where they acknowledge that they read the privacy policy that you sent them. Also, you could potentially consider sending someone an automated response when you're not monitoring the text. This would be, somebody's texting you in the middle of the night at 1:00 and they're like, hey, I'm interested in an appointment. And if you could set it up to where it says, hey, we're going to be back in the office at this particular time, we'll be reaching out to you then. The only reason I say that is because I do think the quicker you connect with someone on some level, even if it's an automated response and you can kind of set expectations, I think the quicker you do that, the more likely you're going down the path that you want to, which is establishing a relationship. So I think that there are times where those automated responses are a good thing. I think that they can be out of control. Like you can have like autoresponders and all kinds of stuff that just sort of gets out of control. And general rule, people don't like talking to bots over human beings. Now there's probably going to be a change in that as time goes on, because I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with ChatGPT, but it is pretty freaking good. So there's probably a time down the road where you can have AI answer your texting or respond to people in a way that's actually really, really competent. But right now it's probably a little sloppy. I don't think that technology is quite there for individual practices. Online scheduling, I think it's great if you don't mind giving up some control of your schedule. You could set the parameters of the schedule, obviously, but there's a certain level of autonomy that's lost there. The one thing I would say about online scheduling is make sure that it is simple and easy to navigate. I've done some online schedulers with chiropractors where I'm like, hey, this is really straightforward. I've gone through others and I've thought to myself, what a giant pain in the butt. This step, this thing, just check, do this, jump here, raise your leg, left foot in, left foot out. Like what a freaking headache. So if you have not gone through your own online scheduler, I would strongly recommend doing that. Try to look at it from a patient's perspective. And if it sucks, get a different one. Those are the type of things you lose patients just because of the process. And, last thing, social media. Social media is awesome if you are a social media guy and you're committed to doing the social media thing. But just be aware of the fact, you have to be aware of the fact that when someone messages you through social media, you are in a gray area when you're talking about health stuff. So just do everything you can to be safe with that. And just don't get yourself in trouble. And I'm not trying to scaremonger or whatever anybody. I'm not trying to make you like afraid of doing anything. Like that's not my thing. But there are potential issues with texting and messaging on social media. And I think that what we should be doing is doing those things as smartly as possible. I think they're great options, especially the texting. I think is probably the best option, honestly, that I think is out there. But do it right. Do it smart as possible. There's no sense in getting in trouble for doing dumb stuff. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. If you know a chiropractor who does not listen to the podcast, I would appreciate you sharing the podcast with them. And there are a lot of them because I am not a big deal. This is not a popular podcast. And there are a lot of chiropractors that could probably use the help that are not getting it. So sharing it would be super awesome. And I would appreciate that. I'm done. I'm out of here. If you guys want help, go to rocketchiro.com and reach out to me. I'd love to help you. I will talk to you on the next episode. See ya.